Fear of loss does not awaken control. Control comes from insecurity, from the need to dominate what one does not trust. Responsibility, on the other hand, rises when something is finally valued. When a man fears losing something meaningful, he does not reach to tighten his grip, he becomes aware of his actions. He begins to see how every word, every delay, every careless choice carries weight. Fear of loss sharpens awareness. It forces reflection. It asks a quiet but powerful question. Am I acting in a way that preserves what matters, or in a way that slowly destroys it? Control is loud. It demands, restricts, and monitors. Responsibility is silent. It observes, adjusts, and improves. A man who fears losing a woman of substance does not try to cage her freedom. He understands that control suffocates what it claims to protect. Instead, he looks inward. He examines his consistency, his integrity, his effort. He begins to recognize that love is not maintained through dominance, but through reliability. Fear of loss teaches him that possession is fragile, while stewardship is enduring. When fear of loss awakens responsibility, excuses lose their power. He can no longer hide behind stress, business, or distraction. He realizes that neglect is not neutral, it is a decision. He understands that emotional absence communicates indifference, even when words say otherwise. Responsibility means showing up even when it is inconvenient, even when comfort would be easier. Fear of loss strips away the illusion that good intentions are enough. Only behavior remains. Responsibility also changes how a man responds to conflict. Control seeks to win. Responsibility seeks to understand. When fear of loss is present, he does not escalate to overpower the moment. He slows down, he listens. He recognizes that every unresolved tension is a fracture, and fractures left unattended widen over time. Responsibility means repairing before damage becomes permanent. It means choosing humility over dominance, clarity over intimidation. A man driven by control watches a woman's movements. A man guided by responsibility watches his own patterns. He begins to notice how his tone shifts under pressure, how silence becomes a weapon, how defensiveness replaces accountability. Fear of loss brings these patterns into the light. It creates discomfort, but also growth. Responsibility is born when a man accepts that he is not entitled to love without effort or loyalty without care. Fear of loss also awakens responsibility in how a man plans his life. He no longer lives only in the present moment, chasing pleasure and avoiding depth. He begins to think long-term. His decisions are filtered through impact, not impulse. He understands that every choice either strengthens trust or erodes it. Responsibility means aligning actions with promises, not because someone is watching, but because integrity demands it. In responsibility, protection replaces possession. A man does not protect by isolating or limiting. He protects by creating safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, consistency. He ensures that his presence does not bring confusion or anxiety. Fear of loss teaches him that instability pushes value away. Responsibility builds an environment where connection can breathe. Control tries to prevent loss by restricting options. Responsibility prevents loss by becoming better. This is the crucial difference. A controlling man fears competition. A responsible man focuses on contribution. He understands that if he becomes dependable, attentive, and grounded, fear of loss transforms into mutual security. Responsibility removes the need for manipulation because it builds trust. When fear of loss awakens responsibility, respect deepens. He stops taking access for granted. He recognizes that being chosen once does not guarantee being chosen again. Responsibility means earning presence repeatedly through care, effort, and emotional maturity. He no longer assumes forgiveness is automatic or patience is infinite. He acts with the understanding that every connection has limits. This awakening also changes how a man handles power. Control misuses power to dominate. Responsibility uses power to stabilize. He understands that his words can heal or harm, that his reactions can calm or destabilize. Fear of loss makes him careful, not timid but intentional. Responsibility refines his strength. It removes recklessness and replaces it with precision. Responsibility does not make a man anxious. It makes him grounded. He does not monitor out of fear, he shows up out of respect. He does not demand reassurance, he provides consistency. Fear of loss does not turn him into a guard, but into a guardian. Someone who understands that what is valuable must be treated with care, not suspicion. Ultimately, fear of loss awakens responsibility because it reveals truth. It shows that love cannot be forced, loyalty cannot be commanded, and connection cannot survive control. Responsibility is the realization that preservation comes from contribution, not possession. It is the understanding that the safest way to keep what matters is to become someone worthy of it. When value is not yet recognized, people perform. They try to impress, persuade, and prove. They speak louder than necessary, promise more than they can sustain, and shape themselves into what they believe will be accepted. Performance is rooted in uncertainty. It is driven by the fear that simply being is not enough. But the moment true value is recognized, performance collapses. Presence takes its place. There is no longer a need to convince, because recognition has already occurred. Presence is calm. It does not rush to fill silence or decorate moments with excess. When someone understands the worth of what stands before them, they stop trying to manage perception. They stop acting. They begin to pay attention. Presence means being fully there without strategy. It is the shift from display to depth, from showing to seeing. Performance requires energy. It is exhausting because it is not aligned with truth. It depends on maintaining an image, remembering lines, and constantly adjusting to reactions. Presence requires awareness, not effort. When value is recognized, there is relief. The nervous system settles. The need to impress dissolves because the risk of being unseen has passed. What remains is authenticity. A man who does not yet recognize value often overextends early. He plans grand gestures, speaks in idealized language, and accelerates intimacy. This is not devotion, it is performance. He is auditioning, but when he recognizes value, his behavior stabilizes. He does not disappear, nor does he overwhelm. He becomes steady. Presence replaces intensity because intensity was never sustainable. Recognition of value also changes how attention is given. Performance seeks reaction. Presence offers connection. Instead of asking how he is being perceived, he asks what is being felt. He listens without waiting for his turn. He notices small shifts in energy, tone, and silence. Presence sharpens perception. When value is recognized, attention becomes respectful rather than demanding. Performance is future-focused. It is always trying to secure something ahead. Presence exists now. A man who recognizes value does not rush moments to reach milestones. He understands that connection deepens through shared stillness, not constant movement. Presence allows space. Space for emotions, for pauses, for truth to surface without pressure. When presence replaces performance, communication changes. Words become fewer but heavier. There is less explaining, less exaggerating, less defending. Presence does not justify itself. It does not need to. It trusts that being aligned will speak louder than being impressive. Silence becomes comfortable because there is no fear of losing relevance. Recognition of value also eliminates the need for comparison. Performance is competitive. It watches others, measures itself, and adjusts accordingly. Presence is rooted. It does not scan for threats because it understands that value is not fragile. When someone knows what they have, they stop fearing what others might offer. Presence also reveals respect. Performance can mimic respect, but it cannot sustain it. When value is recognized, boundaries are honored without resentment. Time is treated carefully. Emotional space is not invaded. Presence understands that closeness is built through safety, not pressure. It does not force access, it earns trust through consistency. A man operating from presence does not disappear when things become ordinary. Performance thrives on novelty. Presence remains when excitement fades. Recognition of value brings patience. It allows growth without constant stimulation. It understands that depth is formed in repetition, not spectacle. Presence also transforms conflict. Performance reacts, presence responds. Instead of escalating to protect an image, he slows down to protect the connection. He listens without rehearsing rebuttals. He speaks without needing to dominate. Recognition of value teaches that winning an argument is meaningless if it damages what matters. There is also humility in presence. Performance is self-focused. Presence is relational. When value is recognized, ego steps aside, not because it is weak, but because it is no longer needed as armor. Presence does not seek validation, it offers stability. It does not perform affection, it practices care. Presence becomes possible only when there is nothing left to prove. Recognition of value removes the fear of invisibility. It allows someone to be exactly where they are, as they are. That is why presence feels rare and powerful. It cannot be faked. It emerges naturally when something is finally seen for what it truly is. Performance tries to create value through action. Presence responds to value through awareness. One is loud, the other is deep. One is anxious, the other is grounded. When value is recognized, the nervous system relaxes, the ego quiets, and attention sharpens. What remains is not effort, but sincerity. Consistency is often misunderstood as discipline forced through effort. Many believe it requires constant motivation, reminders, or pressure. But true consistency does not come from willpower alone. It emerges naturally when intention is sincere. When a man's intention is aligned with what he values, repetition stops feeling like work. It becomes expression. What is sincere does not need to be pushed. It wants to return again and again. When intention is unclear, behavior fluctuates. Attention comes and goes. Promises are made in moments of emotion and forgotten in moments of comfort. Inconsistency is not always dishonesty. Often it is confusion. A man who is unsure of his intentions will act according to mood, convenience, or immediate reward. But sincerity brings clarity, and clarity brings steadiness. Sincere intention simplifies choices. When a man knows why he is present, he no longer debates whether to show up. The decision is already made internally. Consistency becomes the byproduct of alignment, not the result of pressure. He does not ask himself if he should call, communicate, or follow through. He does it because acting otherwise would feel unnatural. Inconsistency often appears when actions are driven by outcome rather than meaning. When a man is trying to gain something, attention, validation, control, his effort spikes and crashes. Performance is exhausting. But sincere intention is not transactional. It is rooted in purpose. When the intention is to build, to care, to protect, effort sustains itself without constant reinforcement. Consistency also deepens when sincerity replaces fear. Fear-based behavior is unstable. It reacts to threats, doubts, and imagined losses. One day it overcompensates, the next it withdraws. Sincere intention does not panic. It is calm. It is not trying to secure something. It is trying to honor something. That shift stabilizes behavior over time. When intention is sincere, consistency shows up in small, quiet ways. Not grand gestures, but reliable presence. Returning messages when promised. Remembering what matters. Being emotionally available even when it is inconvenient. These actions do not feel heavy because they are not strategic. They are honest. They reflect what is already decided inside. A man with sincere intention does not need to be chased or reminded. External pressure feels unnecessary because internal direction is strong. His actions are not dependent on someone else's reactions. He remains steady whether things are easy or challenging. Consistency becomes a reflection of character, not compliance. Sincerity also removes resentment from effort. When intention is false or forced, consistency breeds frustration. It feels like obligation. But when intention is sincere, effort feels chosen. There is no quiet anger about giving more than desired. The giving matches the wanting. This harmony makes repetition sustainable. Consistency rooted in sincerity also builds trust naturally, not because trust is demanded, but because predictability creates safety. When actions align over time, words gain weight. A man does not need to convince anyone of his reliability. His pattern speaks for him. Consistency becomes language. When intention is sincere, a man's priorities rearrange themselves. He does not struggle to make time, he creates it. He does not forget what matters, it stays present in his awareness. Sincerity sharpens focus. It eliminates distractions that conflict with what he values. Consistency is no longer something to maintain, it is something that flows. This kind of consistency survives stress. When life becomes demanding, insincere behavior disappears first. What remains is what was genuine. A man with sincere intention may adjust pace but not direction. He does not vanish, withdraw, or become careless under pressure. His steadiness adapts without breaking. Consistency also becomes visible in boundaries. When intention is sincere, a man does not cross lines impulsively. He respects limits because he understands their purpose. He does not test how much he can get away with. His consistency includes emotional responsibility, not just physical presence. Ultimately, sincerity removes the gap between who someone is and what they do. Consistency is no longer an effort to maintain an image. It is simply the natural rhythm of aligned intention expressed over time. When intention is sincere, there is nothing to remember to do, nothing to force, nothing to perform. Behavior becomes an honest extension of purpose, repeating itself not out of obligation, but out of truth. A man protects what reflects his own growth because it becomes evidence of who he is becoming. Protection is not instinct alone, it is awareness. When a man has not grown, he treats value carelessly. He reaches for what feels good, impressive, or validating, but he does not know how to hold it. Growth teaches him the difference between attraction and responsibility. And once that lesson is learned, protection follows naturally. What reflects a man's growth is not something he wants to lose, because losing it would feel like losing progress. A woman who mirrors his discipline, his emotional maturity, his direction, and his standards becomes more than a companion. She becomes a reflection. Her presence confirms that his efforts have meaning. Protecting her is not ownership. It is preservation of what his growth has earned. Before growth, a man confuses freedom with carelessness. He believes protection limits him. After growth, he understands that protection refines him. He sees that guarding something valuable does not shrink his world, it deepens it. What he protects shapes his behavior. He becomes more mindful, more intentional, more restrained. Protection is a sign that he has something worth guarding and the capacity to do so. A man protects what reflects his growth because it challenges him to remain consistent. Growth is fragile if it is not embodied. When he allows himself to damage or neglect what mirrors his progress, he is forced to confront regression. Protection becomes a commitment to not undo the work he has done on himself. It keeps him accountable to his own evolution. This protection shows up first in how he manages himself. He protects through self-regulation. He watches his reactions, his impulses, his tendencies to withdraw or dominate. He understands that carelessness would not only harm the relationship, but expose parts of himself he has outgrown. Protection becomes internal before it is external. He also protects through boundaries. Not rigid walls, but clear lines that keep stability intact. He does not allow chaos, disrespect, or inconsistency to erode what he has built. He knows that growth requires structure. Protecting what reflects his growth means maintaining standards even when it is uncomfortable, even when walking away would be easier. A man who has grown understands that value can be damaged quietly, not through dramatic betrayals, but through neglect, inattention, and emotional laziness. Protection then is not dramatic either. It is daily, it is checking in, it is showing up when tired, it is choosing presence over distraction. Growth teaches him that small failures accumulate and protection prevents them. He also protects the relationship from outside influences, not by isolating, but by prioritizing. He is careful about what he entertains, what he allows to influence his mindset, and what he brings into the dynamic. Growth sharpens discernment. He understands that not everything deserves access, especially when it threatens something meaningful. Protection deepens when a man recognizes that what reflects his growth also reveals his responsibility. He can no longer pretend ignorance. He sees clearly what his actions create. He understands cause and effect. This awareness makes him careful with his words, deliberate with his decisions, and respectful of emotional impact. Growth removes excuses. A man protects what reflects his growth because it anchors him. In moments of doubt or fatigue, the relationship reminds him of who he is becoming. Losing it would not just be loss of connection, but loss of direction. Protection becomes an act of self-respect. He is not guarding a person out of fear, but honoring a mirror of his progress. This kind of protection is steady, not possessive. It does not control, restrict, or dominate. It supports, stabilizes, and nurtures. Growth teaches him that control destroys reflection. If he damages the mirror, he loses sight of himself. Protection preserves clarity. Ultimately, a man protects what reflects his growth because it is intertwined with his identity. It represents discipline chosen, habits changed, awareness earned. To harm it would be to deny his own evolution. Protection becomes instinctual not because he fears loss, but because he respects what it took to become someone capable of valuing it. Effort often remains minimal when peace is assumed to be permanent. When calm is taken for granted, attention drifts and responsibility relaxes. But the moment peace is threatened, effort rises, not because of panic, but because awareness sharpens. Peace, once invisible, becomes valuable only when its absence is felt. Risk reveals worth, and effort responds to what is finally understood. Peace is not silence alone. It is emotional safety, predictability, and ease of being. When a man lives inside this environment for long enough, he may forget that it was created, not guaranteed. But when tension enters, distance, misunderstanding, or the quiet withdrawal of warmth, he senses instability. Effort increases because loss becomes imaginable. When peace is at risk, complacency collapses. A man begins to notice what he overlooked. Tone becomes important. Timing matters. Small gestures regain significance. Effort no longer feels optional because he recognizes that peace is sustained through attention. What once seemed automatic is revealed as something that must be protected. Effort driven by fear alone is chaotic, but effort driven by the potential loss of peace is focused. It is not loud or dramatic, it is deliberate. A man does not rush to impress. He moves to stabilize. He becomes more present, more considerate, more consistent. His energy shifts from consumption to preservation. Peace exposes truth. When it begins to fade, it reveals which actions maintained it and which behaviors threatened it. Effort increases because accountability appears. A man can no longer tell himself that everything is fine when the emotional atmosphere says otherwise. He must either adjust or accept loss. Effort becomes the choice to adjust. When peace is present, effort feels subtle. When peace is at risk, effort becomes conscious. He starts to listen differently, not to respond, but to understand. He notices emotional cues he once ignored. He recognizes that comfort is not the absence of work, but the result of continuous care. A man who values peace understands that conflict is not the only threat. Neglect is equally destructive. When peace begins to disappear, it is often quiet. There is less laughter, less ease, less openness. Effort increases as he senses this shift. He re-engages not with urgency, but with intention. Effort also increases because peace reflects success, a calm, stable connection is evidence that he is doing something right. Losing it would feel like regression. Effort becomes a way to maintain alignment with his values. He does not want to return to chaos, confusion, or emotional volatility. Peace becomes something to defend. When peace is at risk, effort becomes less about outcome and more about integrity. He wants to know that he did not lose something meaningful through passivity. Effort becomes self-respect. It is the refusal to let something good deteriorate due to inattention. Peace demands a certain standard of behavior. When it begins to slip, effort rises to meet that standard again. A man becomes more mindful of how his stress spills into the relationship, how his silence communicates distance, how his reactions shape the emotional climate. Effort is the correction of course. Effort increases because peace is rare. Many live in constant tension, misunderstanding, or emotional instability. When a man experiences peace, he recognizes its value once it is threatened. He understands that it is not easily replaced. Effort becomes a form of gratitude expressed through action. This increase in effort is not about control, it is about care. Peace cannot be forced, but it can be nurtured. A man learns that maintaining peace requires presence, patience, and humility. When peace is at risk of disappearing, these qualities rise to the surface. Ultimately, effort increases when peace is at risk because loss clarifies priorities. What was once background becomes foreground. What was once assumed becomes cherished. Effort is no longer delayed or minimized. It becomes immediate, intentional, and grounded in the understanding that peace, once gone, is difficult to restore. Commitment remains shallow when respect is optional. When boundaries are flexible, standards unclear, and behavior excused, commitment has no structure to grow within. It stays emotional, reactive, and temporary. But the moment respect becomes non-negotiable, commitment changes form. It deepens not because of pressure, but because clarity replaces ambiguity. Respect defines the space where commitment can safely exist. When respect is negotiable, effort fluctuates. A man tests limits, pulls back, then returns when it suits him. He measures how much he can give while still receiving. But when respect is firm, there is no room for guessing. He knows what is acceptable and what is not. This certainty demands a decision. Either he aligns or he leaves. Commitment deepens only when alignment is chosen freely within clear standards. Non-negotiable respect shifts behavior from convenience to intention. A man cannot remain casual in a space where his actions are fully accountable. He becomes more deliberate. He thinks before he speaks. He considers impact, not just intent. Respect forces awareness, and awareness stabilizes commitment. It removes impulsiveness and replaces it with responsibility. When respect is required, emotional maturity becomes necessary. A man can no longer rely on charm, intensity, or avoidance. He must regulate himself. He must communicate. He must show consistency. Respect demands growth, and commitment grows alongside it. Shallow attachment dissolves under standards. Only genuine investment remains. Respect also removes power games. When it is no longer negotiable, manipulation loses effectiveness. Silent treatments, mixed signals, and emotional withholding no longer produce results. A man realizes that access is not granted through control, but through care. Commitment deepens because the relationship is no longer a place to dominate, but a place to meet as equals. When respect is firm, safety increases. Emotional safety allows vulnerability without fear of exploitation. A man becomes more open because he knows boundaries protect both sides. Commitment thrives in safety. It cannot deepen in chaos or uncertainty. Respect provides the structure that allows emotional bonds to root. Non-negotiable respect also reveals intention quickly. A man who is not serious will feel constrained. Standards feel heavy to someone seeking convenience. But a man with sincere intention feels grounded. Respect does not limit him, it aligns him. Commitment deepens because he knows exactly where he stands and what is expected of him. Respect changes the way conflict is handled. Arguments no longer become battles for dominance. They become moments of correction and understanding. A man who respects a woman does not dismiss her concerns or minimize her feelings. He listens because respect requires acknowledgement. Commitment deepens when conflicts are resolved rather than accumulated. When respect is non-negotiable, time is valued. A man does not disappear without explanation or return without accountability. He understands that inconsistency communicates disrespect. Commitment grows because reliability becomes part of the dynamic. Trust strengthens when behavior matches words consistently. Respect also transforms desire. It moves attraction from surface to substance. A man becomes more attached to what challenges him to be better. When respect is required, he cannot remain passive. Commitment deepens because the relationship demands presence, not performance. A woman who makes respect non-negotiable does not demand commitment. She creates the conditions where commitment is the only sustainable option. A man either rises to meet the standard or exits. There is no chasing, no convincing. Commitment that emerges here is chosen, not negotiated. Respect removes fear from commitment. When boundaries are clear, there is no confusion about expectations. A man does not fear losing himself because respect protects individuality. Commitment deepens because it is no longer associated with sacrifice of self, but with mutual regard. Ultimately, commitment deepens when respect is no longer negotiable because respect creates clarity, safety, and accountability. It filters out half, measures, and attracts alignment. Commitment is no longer about obligation or attachment. It becomes a natural response to a space where dignity is preserved and value is consistently honored.